Hey Married at First Sight fans, welcome back to the channel. Shantia here. So today we're doing a review for season 15. This is going to be for episode 9. So first thing I want to say is that this is probably one of my favorite episodes in all the histories of Married at First Sight because of that segment towards the end that they had with the Dr. Pia, the psychologist who works with couples. I think she works with families as well. And she does like sex therapy, I think, as well. But I thought that was my favorite because all these couples, they're going through the same experience and they have that opportunity to talk about their issues and relate to one another. So there's less shame involved, less embarrassment because they're all going through this beginning experience and they can kind of relate to each other. So I think that's fantastic. And I want to see consistent segments of like that every season, but also throughout the seasons would be great. Okay, so I actually did this review and then I was watching it, rewatching it, and I was editing it. I realized throughout the review, it just seemed like I was all over the place. Like I was out of breath or something, or I was running, racing to get somewhere. So I decided to redo it, plus add some additional points I got from rewatching the episode. So as usual, we're going to start in order, starting with our first couple, which I moved from. Our first couple is Lindy and Miguel. So Lindy Miguel, they have the quirky and cute, the flirtation down, the attraction, all of that is wonderful and dandy, and they make such an adorable couple. And I think some of us sense that they would get along when it came to the attraction and their humor, their personalities. It's wonderful. But the thing that keeps coming up is that apparently Lindy wants to express her most authentic self. And I thought this was a really good topic to discuss today because I understand there are parts of ourselves that's going to be unveiled as we are in our connections. And for Married at First Sight, most definitely this can bring up insecurities because you're marrying a stranger right away. You didn't have that time to court each other and really get to see genuinely, like if you're a match in certain areas, if you're both emotionally open and vulnerable. And then what are the insecurities? What are the traumas that you have? Because we all have some that we're bringing into the equation that we're trying to heal from. So yes, I get what Lindy's saying when she says that, but here's the thing. We need to redefine authentic self. Or I would challenge you or ask you to define authentic self and maybe put it down in the comments section down below. What comes to mind when you think of authentic self? This is how I've come to define authentic self. Your authentic self is neutral. It's completely at peace. Neutral, maybe even happy, content. Your authentic self isn't the insecurities. It isn't your trauma. It isn't your fears that's at the back of your mind. Those are aspects of yourself that was developed through trauma, through repetitive negative thoughts, through repetitive experiences that were very challenging for us and obstacles that came towards us that we had to face and overcome. It has nothing to do with your authentic self. So she's saying she wants to like lose her mind and go crazy, but really that's just an insecurity. She's afraid that someone isn't really her insecurity is that she's afraid that someone isn't going to love her for who she truly is. But who you truly are is who you truly are. And this is why self-love and inner work is so important because some people, they're not taught that inner work is of value or self-love is of value. They're like, self-love, how selfish. Because it has the word self in front of love. People think it's selfish to love yourself and to really develop a relationship with yourself. But the thing is, if you don't develop it, you're always going to be searching and seeking and desiring for someone to fill up your cup when you're supposed to be kind of doing that on your own. What they do is they're a mirror. They get to add to the equation. They get to add to your happiness. They get to contribute to your happiness, but they shouldn't be at the center of it. So her definition of authentic self to me is wrong. Her definition of authentic self is just something I disagree with. That is not what I believe is your authentic self. Your authentic self isn't scared. It's completely content, confident, happy, thriving, peaceful. And that's the part that we have to unveil. The traumas and the wounds are just the top layers of what's what's, a part of us. When you start to dig deeper, you realize we're actually not necessarily whole because we're always working on ourselves, but we're actually just perfectly fine. We're perfectly fine the way we are. And it just takes some time to, again, self-love, practice that. Even with me, I had to have that conversation with myself and realize, okay, I have to like start doing my affirmations again and really giving myself those compliments or those feelings, because I've been trying to find ways to step out of my comfort zone and grow in my confidence and put myself out there in different ways. And it's been great, but at the back of my mind, there's a lot of insecurities that come up every time I step out of my comfort zone. And just like a mother's nourishment, I have to remind myself to nourish myself and give myself that love and tell myself I'm doing awesome. I have to build my self-esteem consistently and, cheer myself on and be my best cheerleader and be my best friend, because I'm the one who's creating these experiences and drawing these experiences to me. And I want to continue to see and be grateful for the growth I've experienced. And it's easy for me to lose track of that. But in general, I think people lose track of their progress. So I think Lindy has some beautiful qualities, but it's actually her resistance and her fear and her fixation on this darker side, her trauma, her inner child, trauma and whatnot. That's her fixation on that is what's making her act up in her partnership. If she took the time to really just sit and reflect and understand, it's just what you have to take care of. I think the ideal conversation would be to have was to tell someone, hey, I have some insecurities. This is what makes me insecure. This is what I'm afraid of. Sometimes I get this way where I express myself, but I know it's not your responsibility to fix it. I just want you to know that that's what happens. And I have a fear that you're not going to accept me when that part of me comes out. So that's my thing, is like, if she just says that, has those conversations and like tames down the emotions, that emotional roller coaster isn't your authentic self. It's not. So hopefully she recognizes that. With Miguel, he was having that conversation with his friend about the red flags, and his friend was saying, hey, we're kind of concerned. She did this at the party and it was a turn off. And Miguel was like, oh yeah, it was a turn off for me. So what I like about Miguel is he's very clear about what bothers him, but I thought it was interesting when he said that it's beautiful that he recognizes Lindy's beautiful qualities, because I feel like that goes to show he really is opening his heart up to her. Sometimes, how when you open your heart to someone and you just start to see all of the good stuff and you're just like on cloud nine and you forget about the crappy things because you're just happy to be with someone and they accept you for you. It just feels really good. So it is easy to overlook those flaws, overlook those things that are less appealing. But when it came to that conversation he was having with his friend, I think his friend made some good points about the red flags. Because interestingly enough, I feel like Lindy is convinced that she is a red flag and that she's trying to be a red flag. So yeah, he needs to pay attention to those flags. And have that conversation. Just be very frank and direct with her. He said he's not okay with taking or handling certain things. And I like that he's tried to reinforce healthy boundaries in their partnership. I think Lindy is having to relearn healthy boundaries. So, I'm going to give every person the benefit of the doubt, because the first time I did this review, I did not. Because I was just like, it bothered me when she was having that conversation telling him, hey, I need to act up and I need you to tame me. And I'm just like, it's not his job to tame you. And that's extremely emotionally exhausting. Now, it's not to say that it's not going to happen. Of course it's going to happen. We're going to have moments where we get emotionally we spiral out, or our partner might spiral out and we have to kind of reel them in. Yes, that is a part of the partnership, but you don't want to create it. You don't want to project it and be like, oh, I would have that conversation and be like, okay, if this happened, how would you respond? How would you react? But ultimately I would know, and I hope that Lindy learns that this is your responsibility. It's your responsibility to control and regulate your emotions. It's nice to have that emotional comfort of someone being there, but ultimately we're here to master ourselves, not master our partner mastering us. Okay, so that's Lindsay and Miguel. Let's go ahead and move further on. So our next couple is Kristen and Mitch. Now, Kristen and Mitch, I always find them such a funny couple because they're the sitcom we didn't know that we needed. I'm just like, someone, can you please just write the sitcom, because I will watch the sitcom. I think they are thoroughly entertaining when it comes to the dynamic of their personalities and who they are. Now, one thing that keeps coming up with Mitch for me is labels. He keeps calling himself this environmentalist. I would very much encourage people to really think about the labels they put on other people as well as themselves. Because once you put yourself in a box, it's hard to get out of that box. Because we are, what do you call it? We're very expressive creatures. We're very movable. I don't quite have the magical terminology right now, but we shift and change. We're shapeshifters. Every single one of us. So once you put your name in a box or you put a label on yourself, it makes you feel like you can't really move beyond that thing. So he considers himself an environmentalist. He's very much committed to this lifestyle. But on top of that, it's in combination with this rebellious side to him, because he said that he felt like he always had to or was forced to do things that he didn't want to do, and now he's done with that. And so he's in this rebellious stage of life where he's kind of acting up. But unfortunately, that's not ideal for a partnership. I feel like Mitch really needs a good 5 years of just being on his own and getting that rebellious side of him out before he's ready to settle down. Because in partnerships, we need stability. We need compromise. So if you want to do your own thing, and realistically, I do know that people do go through evolutions, and sometimes people get married too young, so they're having to reassess like what are their desires again, and they're having to be like, I need to break free. But that's why it's so important to journal, to get in touch with yourself, and to always think about, what are my desires? Am I happy like with how I'm pursuing my life and how things are panning out? Am I grateful? Am I taking in the bigger picture? And Kristen kept pointing out, hey, I am worth it. And I shouldn't have to convince you that I'm worth it. But she is trying to convince him. So we'll talk about Kristen in a bit, but let's get back to Mitch. He's still acting out, and he talked about his parents were divorce, and that played a part in his choosing and also avoiding partnerships as well. So I think realistically, if he took some time just to be single by himself, maybe date casually, and just focus on getting that aspect of him out, then maybe he would feel more ready to settle down. But he has to learn. He's like a very kind person, but he's extremely passionate and very much 100% for his values, which can be good. But honestly, I don't think it doesn't really work in any idealistic situation when it comes to being in a partnership, or let's say being a father. There's so much flexibility that's needed in relationships, because you're with someone who, even if you guys share very similar values, you guys are very similar with what you desire in life, at the same time, they're still very different. This person has their own mind. They're evolving at a different rate. They're progressing at a different rate. So we have to give each other grace to meet each other somewhere in the middle. So yeah, he still has a lot of maturing to do. He even said himself, I think he called himself boyish, and I kept calling him that. So if he called himself that, I called him that. Obviously, we're onto something here. With Kristen, I think I really liked her communication throughout this episode. I really like how she is vocal and spoken up. I think she's learned from her past situations and understands the value of communicating her desires and speaking up and advocating for herself. And especially as women, you have to know how to do that, because naturally we are quite passive. Just naturally, it's a part of our feminine energy. Learning how to speak up for yourself and be direct about your desires is just a necessity. So I would definitely invest in higher, like speaking with a coach, like working with a coach, or doing something where you learn how to enhance your communication skills. And I'm most definitely saying this is important because as much as I love my mother, she wasn't taught really how to communicate and emphasize the importance of her desires. She was more taught the sacrificial understanding of life, which isn't unheard of in Asian culture. She was taught to just like be a part of the family unit and to just be whatever she needs to be in the family unit. But when it comes to that individual identity, it's easy to get lost or be confused about what your individual identity and your desires are. And we'll talk about that even further when we get to Ben later. So Kristen and Mitch had some disagreements. She was very vocal. She was talking about her dreams. He was playing around. He was all passionate, making direct eye contact when he was talking about his job and what he does. And then when she was talking about hers, he was all fooling around and not listening because he takes what he does seriously. So there's a level of ego with him that he's still needing to work through, right? It's that rebellious stage. That's why I'm saying not ideal for marriage, but he could be a fun person to date, but not ideal for marriage. I feel like a lot of his partners have probably looked at him and been like, I can't settle down with this guy, can I? So, Kristen is navigating the relationship as best as she can, but I do kind of feel for her because she was matched with someone who essentially is older, but is still younger when it comes to certain levels of maturity. I don't know, like, to me, he has he can have a very nice temperament. He can have very beautiful, direct communication when it's necessary, but he's still boyish in terms of, I think his desires, like when he gets like very passionate and upset about things. Um, Other than that, yeah, I just really feel bad because she wants this dream of, building her home. She wants to flip houses, and he was getting on her and being a wet blanket when she was talking about her desires, her passion to create a home for her family. This should not be something, but it's something to him. So, sharing the same values is just very important when it comes to partnership. So yeah, I think Kristen is pushing through. I mean, they keep calling each other babe, and pretty much all the couples are very vocal about giving each other terms of endearment. So I'm curious to see how things are going to pan out. But as long as she keeps advocating for herself, even when he was asked to put the shirt on, right? He didn't want to put the shirt on. So long as she keeps communicating and saying, hey, it bothers me that you're doing this, I think she's doing the best she can, considering the circumstances. Yeah. So let's go ahead and move on to our next couple, which is Alexis and Justin. Okay, so I think the theme around them or for them or towards them, it was the love. They all had conversations about love. I didn't really tap into that love conversation with the couples. Let's just retrospectively look back real quick. Lindy and Miguel. So Miguel said time. Actually, pretty much all the guys said time, I feel like, for this episode. And Kristen said she falls in love easily. Oh, let's revisit that. So Kristen says she falls in love easy. I question if that's love. I think she's just very giving and open with her emotions. But it's a layer of love. Let me not get there and question that. But deep love is different. And I think Kristen does have a tendency to sell herself short in terms of what she deserves. She's an amazing person. She's very giving and kind. And she just needs to understand her worth and her value is like, it's priceless, girl. So just reinforce that each time. Mitch said he's had love for people, hasn't been in love. Yeah. Okay, so moving to Alexis and Justin. So it was a little awkward when Alexis and Justin were having that conversation because she was talking about how if she loved someone, she would have a hard time letting it go. She would always love that person. And he's like, well, can you tell me you love me or how much you love me? And she was like, no, I'm uncomfortable. So she's still kind of holding on to the problems that they've experienced. She feels like they need to rebuild trust between the two of them. Justin, I feel like Justin is most definitely emotionally still very much invested and vulnerable and open, but he gets very immature, kind of reminds me like a 12-year-old where you snap and you just say something. He says things from his emotions at times and he just snaps. So that's just what he's needing to work on. I like how he talks sometimes about his emotions, how he expresses his vulnerability. It's very poetic and it's very well spoken, I think, at times. The way he expresses himself, I think, is very beautiful. But he's just needing to learn the importance of like trauma and understanding and identifying, yes, that reaction is a trauma reaction. When you get reactive, that's trauma. So, you say you're not bringing trauma into the relationship, but that's why we need to catch ourselves. And that's why it's great to be in a relationship because they can mirror to you and be like, but yeah, you are bringing your trauma into this. So it's, relationships are very humbling and it's not the conversation we always want to have. We don't want to be told what we're doing wrong, but unfortunately it's going to happen a lot. So it's just a conversation we're going to have to get used to having time and time again. With Alexis, I think there's maturity that's needing to be had. The way she expressed herself during the therapy session, I think, was fantastic when she was talking about how, hey, I need you to keep talking to be understood. And he was like, something about not being understood. This is my understanding of being understood. I do think it's important to communicate and let someone know what's going on inside of you because they don't know. They're not a mind reader. Even if you're very intuitive, you're not a mind reader. So you still need that open communication to understand what's going on under the surface. Here's my opinion of being understood, and I want you guys to comment down below and talk to me about your definition of being understood, or the emphasis or the importance of it in a relationship. You know, when you're talking about it, I want to hear your opinions as well. As far as I'm concerned, we'll never be perfectly understood. The desire to be understood is always so strong, but it's stronger to me. Communicating and letting people know your feelings doesn't necessarily resolve, because I know plenty of people who talk about their feelings all the time and are always telling people about how they're feeling and are always going to therapists, but still don't feel understood. Sorry, I had to my throat got stuck. Yes, I know plenty of people who talk about their feelings all the time, but they still don't feel understood. So in my opinion, even communicating to your partner, as important as it is, it's not going to make you feel understood, or it's not even going to make them understand you fully, because they're never going to be able to understand you fully. They're not in your body living your experience, but they will be able to reassure you and they will be able to accept you. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for reassurance. We're looking for acceptance at the core. But understood, no one will ever perfectly understand us, ever. What's most important is that you reflect, you take time to be introspective, journal, and think about how to understand yourself. Learn about yourself. But because we're progressive, flexible beings, we're constantly evolving, we're always growing. And so we're constantly having to re-understand ourselves and learn about ourselves. You know, how you felt in motherhood versus how you felt as a little girl versus how you felt as a teenager versus how you felt as a single young woman. They're all different phases of your life where you are a totally different person. So this being understood thing, yes, communicate, but you will never be fully understood as far as I'm concerned in any kind of conversation with anyone. So that's just something I'm like, we would have to be let go and be free yourself of this idea and this feeling like I have to be understood. No one will ever understand you. So just liberate yourself of that and learn about yourself, and then learn how to enjoy learning about your partner and learning how and experiencing and watching and observing your partner go through their evolution too. To me, that's exciting. It's like, I like evolving as a person, and I like watching people go through their evolutions as well. Okay, so yeah, I think Alexis has some maturing to do. Sometimes when she speaks, in a way, they're a match because they're both very poetic and very fluid with their emotions. That's the word I was looking for, fluid. They're very fluid with their emotions and expressive with themselves. She has this poetic, creative side to her, and he has that poetic, creative side to him. So they're very much a match in that sense. She admitted that she's a runner, track star, but I do wonder if she's fully understands where that's coming from. I don't think I've seen them have a full-on conversation about where that's coming from yet. So far, it's like she's needing to rebuild trust with him. But I would say in this case of Married at First Sight and having such a short period of time, just recommit. He's a stranger. He's allowed to make mistakes. And I just feel like she should open the doors a little bit more instead of, I think she's still being too defensive and a little bit closed off. That's what I'm sensing from her. But I did see them leaning on each other, and there's something still between them, so we'll see. They even said and admitted, hey, would you leave this connection if we weren't married? She said I would, straight up, and he said he would still give it another shot. So to me, that's maturity speaking. That's not, I know sometimes we want to leave relationships if we're like, oh, it's not easy, but it's just maturity. To me, it's maturity. Justin, in a way, is a bit more mature than Alexis when it comes to that. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to our next couple, Stasia and Nate. So the big thing that came up with Stasia and Nate was the love word. The first conversation they were having was I think it was like a jacuzzi, could have been a pool. And Stasia was like, where are you at on a scale of 0 to 10 in loving me? And I'm like, oh my gosh, please do not give a scale when it comes to love, or even a time limit or a clock, because it really just destroys and dissipates the spontaneity when it comes to relationships. It's like, that's what we're looking for. That's what we're desiring for, is spontaneity and excitement when it comes to our emotions and our feelings. But when you put a measuring tape next to it, now it's not appealing. And especially as a woman approaching a guy about that, now he's in his logic. Now he's just logical. and he can't feel his emotions anymore. So that's my thing with Stasia. I feel like she's coming from the right place. I think she wants to be loved. You can tell, right? She's like, I love you, or I'm feeling like I'm ready to say it. I'm ready to commit. But she's still expecting him and keeps trying to have that conversation with him time and time again. And he's like, I feel like I'm having to prove myself. And at the end of the episode, she's like, no, you're not having to prove yourself. I just need you to open up. And he's like, but I need time. So that's like, as smart as Stasia is, she's not listening. He's told you over and over exactly where he's at. He's been very consistent every time. He's given you the same answer every time. And he's let you know he needs time. And honestly, it's not really time, because time is an illusion. It's more of it's growth. Yes, it is time, but it's like he needs to ease into the experience and learn how to open up. It's an opening up, really. I feel like to some degree, Nate is closed off because of, the lack of nourishment that he experienced with his mother. So there's kind of mothering issues as well as father issues playing into it, and a lack of emotional vulnerability that was experienced in his upbringing. So he's talked to her about this, and she's just like, well, I'm ready to love. You got to give your partner grace. You got to give your partner grace to move at their own pace, to meet you, where they're at, or you guys somehow meet in the middle somewhere, but you just have to give them space. I think it's perfectly fine to admit and be like, well, I'm afraid you don't love me. That's one of my insecurities. I think that's okay. But again, this is kind of one of those moments where I would just say, you need to journal. You kind of need to keep more of that to yourself, because that's not his problem. You not feeling loved by him, he's giving you what he can. So you not feeling loved by him, because he's perfect. He's communicated. He's been direct. He's still trying to show up for you and, be there for you. And his temperament is great when it comes to disagreements and whatnot. His body language is mostly open, but you can't force someone to love you, and you can't measure love. So my hope for Stasia and Nate is that, well, honestly, the only thing that's going to resolve this is that Stasia pulls back and learns how to kind of surrender, and learns the importance of surrender in that connection, that partnership. She's been going to therapy, which is interesting, but for some reason, I feel like what she's needing to do next is talk to a relationship coach or a couples therapist about connecting and how to be more in her feminine energy when it comes to her partner. Because I'm like, yeah, y'all have known each other for like 3 weeks. Give him time. Like, give him time to get to know you, or like 4 weeks. Give him time to get to know you. Give him time to come towards you. Give him space to chase you, because the chasing is exciting. And if you're just there all the time and be like, love me, now it just it's a bit of like an energetic turnoff. Like, they can feel it within them. But yeah, I'm getting a sense of desperation from her. I don't want to paint her in that light, but it is a bit desperate when you're always saying, hey, it is coming from a place of desperation of like, I need to be loved. I need someone to love me. So I'm like, that's just where you need to do your work. When she said that she was a lot, I'm guessing that's what she meant. But she's justified it in her mind that this is okay to measure love, to give him a time limit on love. And it's just a turn off for a lot of people to put a time limit on love. But unfortunately, people do that. I don't know why. It's really bizarre to me, because I feel like love is a gift. It's a gift. It's a blessing. Yes, it's like what Pastor Cal, it's a commitment, but it's not something, and I think we should have open discussions about it so we're not afraid of it. I think that's important, and we should know where we are, like have a discussion about it, but putting a number on love is, ooh, you're spelling the end of your relationship by doing that. I think Nate handled himself well throughout this episode in terms of how he communicated back to Stasia. I feel like he expressed himself well. Even when he got upset, his temperament still was great, and it was consistent. He said he's doing what he can. He's doing the best he can. I feel like Nate is doing fine. Towards the end, though, when he was talking about, well, now I'm upset and I feel like I need to give up, or I want to give up. The difference, again, this is like the difference between maturity and immaturity. Immature people will give up when it gets really hard. When they don't really like a situation, they'll try to find an out. Whereas like a more mature perspective person would be like, I will try whatever I have to do to get us to where we're at, because there's always possibilities. Just like Lindy said when she's like, well, we're committed, right? So we're going to do whatever we can to stay committed. That's her job, is stay committed, not look for all the flaws and see, I'm out the minute this person starts this show. And she was talking about how Miguel was like measuring. Men are logical, so they do have a tendency to be more measurable. But I'm telling you, when you are in your more feminine energy, you're allowing them, you're giving them space, and you're not trying to force upon them to accept you in a certain way. They're more willing to just like give the love and be generous with being open with their emotions. Men are much more slower. Just like Nate said, when he's like, I'm going to take my time, they're extra slower to love. They're slower to love because they need to like process it. Whereas women, we're like, we are love. So it's like easy for us to be like, I love this, I love that. But men, okay, you have to remember they're masculine energy. They're masculine. It just takes them time to get there. You need to give them time. It's a guy. And this is why I always find relationships so funny. I'm like, you're a woman. He's a man. Why do you expect your man to be a woman? He's not a woman. He doesn't process emotions like you. They process differently. So another thing that's like really dangerous sometimes in relationships is the disadvantage of married at first sight is that women do fall in love and they feel more of that connection the more time they spend with the person they're with. Because they feel the safety, they feel the protection, and then they start to just open up and feel, and be more vulnerable in that connection. So the more they communicate, the more they talk with, are physically around that person, the more connected they feel to that man. So it's easier for her to fall for him. Whereas a guy, he falls through, what was it? I would say, like, what do men always say? They fall in love when they see your heart. So they're like, oh my gosh, I love her heart. I love her heart. So it's like the minute they see your heart and they really feel that connection to you in that sense, that's when they feel that trusting openness. So when you're going around being like his mother and telling him, hey, when are you going to fall in love with me? And hello, you better be ready for my wild side to come out. It's a turnoff. It's such a turnoff. Like, just hopefully we start to learn that and we start to do better with ourselves and for ourselves. All in all, I think Stasia is great. She's fantastic. I love the way she communicates. I love her open vulnerability, but this is just that one thing, girl. You need to go to like a feminine coach or like a feminine dating coach or like a relationship coach to understand how your feminine energy works and to understand you can't ask a man to measure his love for you. It's going to turn him off. So she's doing a lot of the things you most definitely do not want to do in a courtship, let alone a marriage. Okay, so I like the practicality. I think they are a match. I just hope they push through. But like with Nate, his age is kind of showing when he says, okay, I'm going to give up now. I'm like, now's not the time to give up. I'm like, this is just the beginning, Nate. You're starting to see your wife's insecurities. You're starting to see when things really get difficult. What are you going to do to save this marriage? That's my challenge to you. Okay. So let's go ahead and move on to our final couple, which is Morgan and Ben, right? Okay. So Morgan and Ben. I think Ben is giving his best effort. I don't know what's coming up in the next episode as far as apparently he said or did something wrong to offend her, but I think he's doing his best. Now, so the opening scene was when they had the mermaid date. They went on that date and she's like, I just want to be with someone who says yes to everything. Well, here you go. You got him. Ben's that guy for you. He will say yes. He has no problem with that. He says he will do whatever it takes to make you happy. But on top of that, he has some innate people-pleasing qualities. So again, that just makes him a little bit more willing to try things out of his comfort zone, which is good to some degree and really helpful in terms of helping to create compromise. Later on, when they were having that conversation about love, it was very interesting. So Ben was talking about one of his previous relationships about, love and how he had gone through this challenging time. His best friend had died, his grandmother had died, and he was in a connection with a woman while he's in college, and then it ended because of those very dark, depressing situations in his life. And he was needing to be alone and process that and process his emotions. And then Morgan comes out and says, when a guy got drunk, he told me he loved me, or he told me he would do anything for me. And I was just like, I'm sorry, what? That was your vulnerability? that girl's vulnerability is turned. So I'm starting to realize that Morgan is emotionally closed off. She's emotionally unavailable. You know how we always talk about how guys are emotionally unavailable? Morgan is emotionally unavailable. So Ben's here, he's pouring out his heart. He's telling you about all of its insecurities. He's trying to help you understand his upbringing. He's cooking you Korean barbecue in the middle of the house while telling you why he's a people pleaser and admitting that he's a people pleaser. All the while you're like, you know what? It's okay, Ben. I'll help you with that. No hug, no love, no vulnerability, nothing. Just dead. So Morgan's emotionally unavailable because of her issues with trust. So here's my thing. People always say, okay, I want love. I want to be desired. I'm like, here's someone who wants to try to desire, who's willing to commit, who's willing to try, but you won't let yourself be desired. So it's never the other person's fault, ever. You know, if you don't feel desired, it's probably because you don't know how to feel desired. So you have to practice feeling desirable. Practice feeling desirable, practice understanding, getting in connection with pleasure of life, enjoying life, and then you'll be able to create that experience with someone else. She's always saying he's not complimenting her. I think Ben is kind of treating her like a guy, but that's because she comes off as very masculine. I think she often, in a way, has like tried to compete with him ever so subtly, because even while he's pouring out his heart and he's being vulnerable and open, she's all shut off and she's like, okay, I'll help you. That, like, the way that she would talk to him sometimes felt kind of condescending. And I could sense that and I could feel that. And I'm not surprised that Ben's talking about Morgan behind her back, because I would talk about Morgan too. I would want a friend to express that frustrations too. And that's what he's been doing with Justin. Apparently Justin is talking to Alexis about this, which I'm just like, what? And then Alexis is telling Morgan. That's not, again, I think Alexis' immaturity is showing, because I'm like, you don't just go around, you let those couples figure it out on their own. You keep that amongst your husband. You don't go around tearing people's relationships apart. I don't care if you think you're a good friend or what it is. I'm like, obviously, if he's lying and it's super deceitful, maybe can tell him or have a conversation with Ben first and be like, hey, maybe you need to tell your wife this. But Morgan is shut off emotionally. So I don't think Ben feels like he can really approach her about certain concerns or insecurities, is what I'm sensing. So that might be what comes up in the next episode. All in all, I think I loved Ben's story about his childhood and about his upbringing. He was very thorough, very detailed. He talked about the pressure of being a part of Asian culture, being expected to be a doctor and go to an Ivy League school of some sort, and he wasn't able to meet those measures, and he feels like he's not good enough to both of his parents. His parents were immigrants. They weren't as emotionally available either. So y'all don't believe in karma, but isn't it interesting how all these couples have been perfectly matched with the very person who brings out their insecurities? Stasia wants that emotional, she craves for the emotional connection the most. And Nate is slightly emotionally, he's slightly emotionally numb. You know, he's still learning to grow into it. And I love that he's conscious, he's self-aware enough to communicate that, but he's still a little bit immature in the sense that, you know, Stasia is like, okay, we keep fighting, we keep working on it. Whereas Nate is like, okay, I'm getting tired, I'm getting worn out. Well, even when you get worn out, you still got to keep fighting for it as best as you can. Okay, so the last note I'm going to leave is, women, remember that you emotionally lead your partnerships, you emotionally lead your connections. So take charge of your emotions and understand that your masculine counterpart is following your lead through your emotions. So when you're very clear about your emotions, when you're clear about your desires, he's clear about how he feels about you. When you're clear about, you can even be clear to yourself and be like, I want the affection, right? I want the love, I want the desire. Just align with it within yourself and say, I deserve to be desired. Not, I deserve to be desired, versus I deserve to be desired. You know, feel and embody that desire emotions, the desired feelings, and eventually your divine counterpart will follow you, because men are more instinctual in terms of how they move with their emotions and how they move with their partners, okay? So that's what I'm going to end with. I hope you guys enjoyed that review. I'll be back next week with another review of Married at First Sight. The last thing I want to say is I'm interested in maybe doing a series on this channel that's dedicated to helping women get clear about their desires or align with their desires. or, you know, have those conversations about relationships, maybe even possibly doing lives, because I just want to do something on this channel where we can have those conversations. And I just want to see what you guys are interested in, because obviously we all watch the show. We're all observant of these connections and relationships. I'm fascinated by relationships. I'm fascinated by the psychology of people. So I want to start a new series where we can talk about those things, talk about our desires, our goals, and any of that. But I would love to be a part of creating that with y'all. So just let me know, what are the topics you're interested in discussing on this channel. All right. Have a beautiful day or evening. Bye.